Hi, this time we're going to go through paragraph 10 that goes through the disclosures, inspection, and due diligence. So the first one is 10.1, the seller is required to use this most current version of the Real Estate Commission's Seller's Property Disclosure Form. On that, the seller will list everything they know about the house, from the roof to the foundation, to if there's pets in there, water supply, all this kind of stuff needs to be in there to their best of their current knowledge. The broker is not allowed to help them fill it out. They just fill it out themselves according to what they currently know. They're required to tell the buyer about anything they know that is what they call an adverse material fact. So anything that they know is bad about it, it has to be in there. That's by law. On the other hand, the buyer acknowledges that the seller is conveying the property in as is, where is, and with all faults. So, buyer beware. But the seller is supposed to tell you everything they know about what's going on. Now, the buyer has the right to get inspections done at their own expense. Most buyers will obviously do this. Some think they can do it on their own, and if they're a contractor, maybe they can. Everybody else should probably hire an inspector and get this done, because it will go through everything that you need to know to make sure the property is safe and up to standards, so that when you buy the property, you know exactly what you're getting. Of course, with all these others, you have the right to object. If you don't like something, you can terminate on the spot. You can work out a resolution with the seller by the resolution deadline. And if that expires without anything being done, then the contract terminates. So the buyer is responsible for paying for all these tests, engineering reports, and anything else, and they've got to pay for any damage that those inspectors caused the property. So the seller's not coming out of pocket for anything. If your inspector breaks something, you get to pay for it. Of course, you may charge the inspector for it. Then you have an opportunity to make sure your insurance is up to the way you want it, the availability, terms and conditions, and the premium. And you've got a right to terminate before the insurance deadline if you don't like it. Due diligence documents. If either of these boxes are checked, the buyer wants these from the seller. If there's any leases on the property, anything else that would affect the price or occupancy of the property needs to be revealed to the buyer. If there's anything else that should be revealed, that needs to go in here under other documents and information. So once the buyer has all that, of course, they can review and object. If they don't like it, once again, they can terminate, or they can ask for a resolution and by the deadline. And again, it's if that's not worked out, then the deal's done. So sometimes the buyer will need to sell the property they're in before they can pay for the new one. They need to get the money out of their existing home before they can have enough down payment to get the loan and buy the new property. If that's the case, this would be filled in. It says the contract is conditional upon the sale and closing of my house at 123 Main Street. I can terminate once the seller knows about this before the conditional sale deadline. This section is for the sole benefit of the buyer. So if the buyer is trying to sell their house but can't, and they let the seller know before the conditional sale deadline, then they can get out. Another thing that needs to be revealed is where's the water coming from. So the buyer either does or does not, you've got to check one of those, acknowledge the receipt of a property disclosure or source of water addendum disclosing the source of potable water. So if there's no well, you check that. If there is a well, you check that the buyer does or does not get the receipt of the current well permit. And then 10.9 is intentionally deleted. I don't know why they even leave it in there, but that's the way they do it. Then there's a lead paint disclosure that has to be filled out, again, by the seller. It's just a checkbox. If their house was built before January 1st of 1978, there's a chance that there was lead paint used because it was outlawed on that date and it was never used after that. But if you've got an older home, there may be some lead paint. The seller probably doesn't have any up-to-date knowledge about it, and they'll say that. And then the buyer can decide if they want to just accept it or if they want to have their own inspection done. And so they've, not only the seller, but both real estate agents must sign and deliver to the buyer this completed lead-based paint disclosure before the deadline. And then here's where the assessment comes in. The buyer can terminate if they're not happy with the lead-based paint assessment. So if the seller said, yeah, I know there's lead-based paint in here and it's everywhere and I'm not doing anything about it, this buyer can get out of it, terminate. Otherwise, if the seller doesn't hear back that you're out, then you're still in. Carbon monoxide alarms are required by state law. If you've got a bedroom in the house, as you probably will, and you've either got an attached garage, a fireplace, or anything fuel-fired heater or appliance. So if you've got a gas, a hot water heater, if you've got a wood-burning fireplace or a gas-burning fireplace, and you've got a bedroom, then you're required to have an operational carbon monoxide alarm installed within 15 feet of each bedroom. So if you've got 3 bedrooms in a hallway, you may be able to get away with just one because it's within 15 feet of all of them. But it needs to be in there and it needs to be working. Smoke alarms are a good idea too, but as you see, they're not required by this contract. If the seller knows that meth was ever manufactured, processed, cooked, disposed of, used, or stored, you've got to disclose that fact. However, if there, say an investor bought a meth house and got it cleaned up according to the state regulations, no disclosure is required if the property was remediated in accordance with state standards. The buyer still has a right to terminate if they're not happy with the results of that. So that's the end of paragraph 10. Again, here's another one. Tenant estoppel statements is intentionally deleted. Estoppel statements are basically if you're buying a rental property and the renter is still in there, the estoppel statement is the tenant's statement that the leases are correct as far as they know. Here's what I'm paying for rent, but that's been deleted. So that's no longer part of this contract. So that's it for this one.